Pastor Ed here with Daily Devotions for Tuesday, January the 17th, 2023. We're going to be looking at the Matthew 4, 1 through 17 passage from this past Sunday. The Matthew's account of Jesus's temptations in the wilderness that immediately followed his baptism. And we're going to be talking about temptation, what Jesus's experience represented, especially for us, but then also how temptation exists in the world and in our lives, and kind of related issues. So we've got a week's worth of 5 days at least worth of conversation. But first I want to talk about the idea that the tempting, because that same word can be translated, the same Greek word can be translated as test, that Jesus was tested in the wilderness. Story is told about a guy who was drafted into the military back in the days when there was a draft, and you could see my white hair, and the draft was abolished just before I still had to register, but they weren't drafting anybody at that point in the early 70s. But this fellow says, I didn't enlist in the Army, I was drafted, so I wasn't going to make life easy for anyone. During my physical, the doctor asked softly, "Can you read the letters on the wall?" Well, he answered, "What letters?" thinking he was being clever. And the doctor said, "Good, you passed the hearing test." Again, the idea that this was like a test, a contest even. There's a great story about a picture that depicted a great chess match. Apparently in the early part of the last century, an artist who was also a great chess player painted a picture of a chess game. The players were a young man and Satan, and the young man manipulated the white pieces, Satan the black pieces, and the issue of the game was this. Should the young man win, he was to be forever free from the power of evil. Should the devil win, the young man was to be his slave forever. Well, the artist evidently believed in the supreme power of evil, for his picture presented the devil as the victor. In the conception of the artist, the devil had just moved his queen and had announced a checkmate in 4 moves. The young man's hand hovered over his rook. His face paled with amazement. There was apparently no hope. The devil wins. He was going to be a slave forever. Well, for years, this picture hung in a great art gallery. Chess players from all over the world viewed the picture, and they unfortunately, reluctantly had to agree with the thoughts of the artist. The devil wins. Well, after several years, though, a chess doubter arose. He studied the picture, and became convinced that maybe there was another ending. There was, and thought that there was probably one chess player that he could think of on earth who could give him that assurance. So this chess player was an aged man by the name of Paul Morphy, a resident of New Orleans, Louisiana. Morphy was a supreme master of chess in his day, an undefeated champion. So a scheme was arranged through which Morphy was brought to Cincinnati to view the chess picture. Well, he stood before the picture 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. He was all in concentration. And he lifted and lowered his hands as in imagination he made and eliminated various moves. Suddenly his hand paused. His eyes burned with the vision of an unthought of combination. Suddenly he shouted, "Young man, make that move. That's the move." To the amazement of all, the old master, the supreme chess personality, had discovered a combination that the creating artist had not considered. And the young man had defeated the devil. There's that sense in the Gospels that there was this contest between good and evil, between God and Satan, and Jesus was the one right in the midst of it, and that he defeated Satan certainly for the time being when he resisted the temptations, and then ultimately the ultimate unexpected chess move of the resurrection, which I'm sure we'll talk about when we get to Easter. But it's seen as this contest. Chuck Swindoll, the famous preacher, once said, Jesus went into the desert to confront his enemy, throw down the gauntlet. He would prove himself to be the legitimate shepherd of Israel by overcoming the temptations that had undone all of Israel's previous kings, including his mighty ancestor, King David. And so there's this sense in which it was a test, and Jesus passed the test. I prefer another way of looking at it, a story that I've used before, which is to me a classic. And it goes like this. As the Union Pacific Railroad was being constructed, an elaborate trestle bridge was built across a large canyon in the west. Wanting to test the bridge, the builder loaded a train with enough extra cars and equipment to double its normal payload. The train was then driven to the middle of the bridge, where it stayed an entire day. And one worker asked, "Are you trying to break this bridge?" "No," said the builder. "I'm trying to prove that the bridge won't break." Well, in the same way as this story goes, the temptations that Jesus faced weren't designed to see if he would sin, but to prove that he couldn't. And he didn't. So we'll end there for today. We'll continue to talk about temptation in the days to come. Hope you have had a great start to your week, and hope to see you tomorrow. Until then, take care. Bye.